Hello everyone, I'm Cass with College of Lore.
I am the Penitent with College of Lore.
This is our series, Let's Talk About. In the last two videos that we've uploaded, we talked about 1 D&D, and we talked about Critical Role, although that one got a little bit sidetracked toward the end.
Ooh, spiders.
Today we're gonna talk about something related to
I
spiders.
realized that segue started too early.
Today we're gonna talk about spiders!
We got a little
Excited!
We got a little sidetracked. Ooh, spiders.
Yeah, we talked about spiders in the Critical Role video. That's definitely what happened there. We're gonna talk about Drow in today's episode, which is where the spiders bit came in.
Yes.
You were a little early on the cue there. I have a lot of feelings about Drow as they're portrayed in the D&D source material, and I am going to tell you all about it right now.
They've been better as of late, I will
They've gotten better.
say that.
Dritz should not be the only good example of Drow in modern source stuff. We're gonna talk about Dritz in another video, but today we're talking about Drow as a concept and as a general thing. Don't be racist in the comments of this video. Don't even be fantasy racist. It's still bad. It's not the same thing, but it is still a shitty thing to do.
Yes, so, what are Drow?
So Drow are an elf subrace that traditionally dwell underground in a thing known as the Underdark. It's basically a giant, massive underground cave system thing where a lot of creatures live, but specifically a lot of Drow make their homes there. They have kind of a very dark appearance just in general, usually pure white hair, kind of dark gray or purpley dark skin. They're an elf subrace. They're kind of like the polar opposite aesthetic of like surface elves in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
They have a lot of similar features in build and in style, and in to some degree activity, and a lot of people for the most part pin them as evil, like entirely, which is not good.
And that's the book's fault.
Yes,
Oh,
that
in
is
a
the
lot of
book's
ways,
fault.
that's the source's fault.
That's the book's fault. And I get why it comes to that level. The vast majority of Drow, as written, pretty much every Drow as written, and maybe the majority in most games even, serve the Drow spider goddess Lolth, who is kind of terrible and evil, and that's fair that a lot of people kind of get that image and are like, oh, okay, so Drow are evil, got it. I do not like lumping one group of people together as solely evil. It's really bad to do. It leads into bad things both in other games and in real life. It's an unhealthy mindset.
It's
an
harmful,
unsafe
and
mindset.
I know there are people out there who will say that it's not
Because it's just a
harmful.
game.
It's
It's
a
not
game
real.
in a world where gods are provably real, it makes sense for one race to be evil. It doesn't.
It doesn't. There's always going to be an exception to that, and you know, people talk about, like, Dritz does, like, the Drow who rebelled against Lolth in the Underdark and left to be an adventurer on the surface. There's more than one of those, probably.
You know.
There are always more than one of those in our games.
And despite what people that suck would tell you, there are no religions that are entirely evil.
No.
But
And there are plenty of people who are victims of circumstance, even in religions that generally aren't great.
you know, as someone who grew up strict, church every Sunday, Holy Roman Catholic,
Yeah.
I can say that I broke away from that religious conditioning. I have several friends who broke away from that religious conditioning.
Things turned out very different
Yeah.
for you, and you were at points in your life a victim of circumstance in that way, and you were raised in a lot of harmful ideology, and it takes a lot to break out of that, but that doesn't make you evil.
Yeah, and again, if you are not politically left, I don't know why you're here.
No, yeah.
I was very right-leaning until I was a teenager.
And then you kind of got exposed to things that and you were like, oh, okay, so maybe that's not great, actually.
Yeah.
And, like, yeah, it's a thing of... Indoctrination is a thing. Being a victim of circumstance is a thing. Being raised in a setting that doesn't teach you anything better or else at all is a thing. Even beyond that, though, there are, at least in our world and really in any world, plenty of Drow who don't follow Lolth, or people who don't follow that kind of religion, or people who follow a different religion despite the fact that most people follow the same one.
Especially those held down by that religion.
Yes.
Which, while there's no evil real religions, there are some religions that basically expressly ban
a lot of things.
a lot of things.
A lot of things that are cruel and harmful to certain marginalized groups.
Have negative views of those marginalized groups, and there was a perfect opportunity in Out of the Abyss.
Yeah.
There is a character in that book who, mild spoilers, was a former, kind of this former, like, favored slave. This male Drow is a former, like, favored slave. And boy toy of the High Priestess there, who's been replaced since he got kind of horrifically scarred.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been such a good opportunity to have that person be a turncoat because they realized how bad the religion was treating them.
Yeah.
But no, it's just guilted feelings, and this character is gonna betray the party.
Yeah.
Like it's written in the book, he will betray the party because all Drow are evil.
Yeah.
Basically.
Which is stupid. In one of the stories that we have played through a lot in our home games, we often, and this is not just in that one game, there is a whole trend for us of creating our own factions in that sort of vein. Factions of Drow who are either, pacifists, don't condone what Lolth does but don't fight against her followers, or who actively try to dispel that and fight against it because they know that it's wrong.
Or we've had, sometimes we have a game where we have multiple good factions of Drow, and 3 separate, different ideologies, bad operations of Drow.
Yeah.
One that serves Lolth, but one that serves a messiah, and one that kind of functions as like a, these hurt and understandably really jilted, male Drow.
Yeah.
Who have been wronged by this system and are striking back violently.
I didn't say this yet. You probably already know this to some degree if you're watching this, but if you don't, Drow are a super, super, super matriarchal society because Lolth is a goddess and they're, like, Spider Queen. And female Drow, it's basically like the reverse of extreme sexism, where female Drow are infinitely, infinitely more elevated in status, and male Drow are basically always slaves.
Yes, which, Drow can be PCs, by the way.
Yes. Drow can be PCs. Sometimes they can follow Lolth. Usually they don't. We've played a lot of games where Drow are PCs, and they don't do that.
There are other fantastic options for Drow to follow that are good aligned if you want to make a religious Drow.
Illustrate,
Corellon,
yeah.
Corellon,
who is just in general elf god.
Shar isn't good.
Shar is not canonically good. We'll talk about that someday. Yeah. We have a very interesting structure of how we view gods in 5e, which is, I will talk about it just a little. We'll definitely talk about that in one of the Academy videos that's going to go up eventually when we talk about the Pantheon. Our view of how religion and deities work in 5e basically boils down to, a lot of the time their followers shape them more than they shape themselves. Generally, in our view, somehow a mortal gets appointed to godhood, or a demigod sometimes gets appointed to godhood. And there is a lot of pressure from followers to act a certain way, it just kind of, by the nature of your existence as a deity, your following influences you, and a lot of gods who are followed for evil purposes kind of shift evil because of that, and some of them are just bad people. There are also some good aligned gods who can be bad people, and who we write as that in a lot of our games. In a lot of our games, Shar is one of the few who kind of resists that, which is mostly just a matter of that's how the story played out for that god in particular, and it kind of stuck with us. Which is why we say Shar is a great god for you to follow if you're not evil, despite her being, I think, neutral evil, canonically. Shar is like chaotic good in our brain, somewhere in chaotic neutral range. We play her weird.
Yes.
We definitely play her weird.
This video is about Drow.
Yes, this video is about Drow.
So, yeah, you can make Drow.
There are good options. You can have Drow that follow any god if you wanted. I think, it's kind of a funny, like, dramatic, but also kind of ironic thing, a Drow that follows Lathander. Because they were, I don't know, rescued by the surface or something, I don't know. You did that once.
I have played a Drow that doesn't know what Drow are.
Yeah.
Which is very fun.
She thinks she has a skin condition.
Yes.
And she was raised in a temple to Lathander, and so she follows Lathander even though the sun hurts her eye.
Yes. Another great thing to do with Drow, if you are so inclined, trans species. Yes. Either
In either direction, it's super interesting.
Or in a non-binary direction.
Yes. I played an incredible trans man, Drow, who sacrificed all of the power and status that he had in a temple to Lolth where he originally worked when he decided to accept who he was, embrace being a man, and ditch the temple. Because he, one, knew that they weren't doing the right thing, and two, knew that he didn't want to be seen as something wrong for doing that, for embracing who he was, and so he left and started an adventure with some other people that he met on the surface. I also love stories of just Drow that live on the surface in general. Either they were born there, or they traveled there after leaving a temple to Lolth, or after kind of some soul-searching journey from the Underdark to the surface. I think all of those are great, interesting ways to tell a story of a Drow that isn't just evil follower of Lolth who lives underground and kills everyone else who comes there.
And about the trans thing specifically, like, being a trans man, giving up that much privilege.
Yeah, especially in a society where it's really, really skewed. Basically resigning yourself to, instead of being a revered priestess, being the lowest of the low slave.
Yeah, and needing, you know...
Your whole life changes.
Yes.
But also...
Not that you'll be accepted, you'll need to run, basically.
Yeah.
But also, for a trans feminine person.
Yeah. Being someone who is viewed as the lowest of the low on the totem pole there, and desperately wanting to be seen as what you are, but knowing that no one would ever allow that because in their eyes, you're a man, and that makes you below all of the women in the temple or whatever.
Or someone gender fluid or non-binary or any other sort of identity that isn't solidly in the gender binary.
Yeah. Who has even more issues in different ways because... You have to pick a role in that society. You have to conform to one thing. If you're gender fluid or non-binary, there's not room for that there.
And one of my personal favorite villain Drow we've ever run is a trans man who, instead of accepting himself, kind of went off the deep end of Lolth worship. Basically in a repression way.
Yeah.
And eventually does come to who he is. It wasn't conscious repression, it was this unconscious repression that kind of just threw him into this Lolth worship, but...
Yeah. And that was actually... I think I'm thinking of the right one.
Ferox.
Yeah, that was the same one with the other Transmaster Drow PC, and we didn't know this at the time, at the beginning of the game. Yeah, they were cousins. Which is super funny. I had no idea when I made that character, and you had no idea, I don't think, when you started DMing that character. But they were cousins, and it was funny. It was super wild. Trans people flock together, I guess. But yeah, Drow don't all have to be evil. There's a ton of exploration of identity there that's interesting. There's a ton of room for you to create your own factions that either do or don't align with Lolth, whether good because they don't, or evil in the same way, or in a similar way to Lolth followers, even though they don't align with Lolth. There's a ton of room for that. There needs to be more nuance in things like that. There is no reason for all Drow to be evil, and I don't think they should be.
And really,
I know where it comes from, but it's wrong.
And credit to D&D for correcting course with Drow, with orcs, with Vistani.
Yes, that's another one that works in a very similar way.
And if you're out there arguing that D&D is soft, or ruining the game
or being overly politically correct.
Yeah, or making it political by changing things about these races, fuck you.
Yeah, no. That's stupid. This kind of stereotype may exist in fantasy, and it may be, to you, just a thing in fantasy, but it does hurt real people. To adopt that mindset in one setting makes it so much more easier to adopt that mindset in another, and it also usually means it's somewhere latent in you and you're just refusing to acknowledge it in the real world.
Yeah.
You know, there is a degree of bigotry in all of us. This is something very controversial I'm about to say. Everyone is bigoted. Whether you use that actively or not is very different from person to person. Everyone has some degree of that in them, even internalized in some people. And it is an active choice to be better about that, and this is one of the very, very many ways, and honestly this is a minor way, but it matters. You have to make the choice to not let that mindset affect you in ways that will let the rest of it seep into your brain, and this is one of those ways. This is one of those things where if you're racist in a game, you're latently racist in real life, and someday that will shape that in a more direct way, and you will start to think it's okay. Even if you don't think that will happen, that is what's happening. You're letting yourself be conditioned in that direction. Fundamentally, don't be racist. It's bad.
Yeah.
Just fight that. You know, it is a thing you can do. You can choose to support other people. Just in no matter what marginalized group they're in, at all times. You have to choose support. It's never just a passive thing.
Yeah. And
that's why this matters, is because it's not passive. You know, it's... Wizards of the Coast are making an active choice to promote the right thing here. And that's a thing that they have to do.
You know, I realize this is the second straight episode where we've set out to talk about one thing and ended up talking about mostly another.
Okay, but
so
fine.
We may call this Drow / representation or something along those lines.
Well, it still mostly revolves around Drow.
But yeah, just genuinely, there is so much... It's boring. It's boring to
make everyone be evil.
This planet of hats where that hat is evil. Why is that something you want to do, even?
Yeah. It doesn't tell any narrative. It's like, boring.
The only excuse I've ever heard for someone is they want their players to not feel bad about having to...
You can still do that without all of them being evil.
Then, if you want them to feel uncomplicated about slaughtering something en masse, don't use people that can think for themselves.
Yeah.
Use things that are connected to a hive mind. Use things that can't act on anything but instinct.
Yeah. I don't know, owlbears or something. It doesn't have to be real living people with thoughts and feelings who are not homogenous.
Uncomplicated murder of a mass group of people is just... It's not...
genocide.
Yeah.
It's genocide. Don't do that. That's bad. Even if it's in fiction, even if it's fantasy, even if it's not real, it's bad. Don't do it.
Yes.
Just it's a blanket statement. And there is no excuse.
And it's boring. Beyond the badness of it, it's really boring.
What narrative does that push for you? None, except for the badness of it. That's all it pushes.
Now that being said,
the whole story.
You know, there's not necessarily a structure where you're going to play a game where, unless you're doing something very AU, which I would actually be down to see this, where the Drow are the good guys.
Yeah. Not all of them, certainly. But there can be good guy Drow in your story.
Yes.
And there should be good guy Drow in your story. If your story is at all going to revolve around Drow, there need to be good ones as well as bad ones. And if you're going to throw any Drow in there, at some point you gotta balance that out a little, just to indicate not everyone in this group of people is evil. Just don't do that.
You know, when you have one Drow in your story, you know, maybe
that's fine, but don't let it be the representation of all of them,
If you're going to the Underdark, you should encounter varied and
dynamic groups of people.
Because every group of people is varied and dynamic.
Yeah.
And I think Drow are a great thing to use in your game. There are so many interesting storytelling opportunities in a society that rigid, that heavily enforced, that
confined, and constrained.
Confined, and that hated, honestly. That
hated and sometimes hateful.
Yeah.
In response.
But a little legwork goes a long way.
Yeah. And it makes a difference, especially to people who it'll matter to, despite you not thinking it'll matter if you're writing it that way. Yeah. It will impact someone someday in a way you don't expect it to, if you write it in a bad way. Someone will get hurt eventually, and you might feel bad about it. If that hurts one of your players, you know, you should feel bad about that, and you should change that, but don't need to change it, because don't do it in the first place.
Yeah. So
yeah.
With that being said, good Drow.
Yeah.
We'll be talking next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about Dredz.
Dredz Sourden.
Yeah, who is awesome, and a good Drow. And we will get to that the next time we see you all in this sort of video. Tell us stories, preferably not of all bad Drow. Tell us good interactions that you've had with Drow characters in your games, or interesting dynamics that you've created with Drow characters in your games.
What's our time at?
Almost 20.
Okay. I was going to give you an opportunity to talk about something, but I think that is better saved for a future video.
Alright.
Also, I'll just briefly say this. Ship Drow and High Elves together. Make romantic relationships between Drow and High Elves.
Romance. Yeah. I think it's cute.
Here at College of Lore are a big sucker for Drow High Elf relationships and Tiefling Aasimar relationships.
Yes, we think it's cute.
We
also think it's great representation.
Yes.
And it proves that not all people on either side have to be hateful to each other.
Yes, I actually remember, and not necessarily opposites either, because I remember a great relationship that we had in the past between a tiefling and a core.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, Drow, use them in a smart way.
Use them compassionately and understanding.
Yes. Use them with the understanding of how real groups of people function, because even in fantasy, you want these groups of people to function like realistic groups of people. No person isn't a monolith.
Yes. Alright, thank you guys for listening to us talk about this. It is really important to us, and I hope that it has been imparted on you in this video that this really does have an effect on things. Take care of yourselves, love yourselves, love each other, and we will see you next time at College of Lore.
Thank you for watching this video from College of Lore. Remember to like this video, subscribe to join the party, and have a fantastic adventure.